name is Kelly Spolsky, and I'm with Thunder Bay Live, and I'm sitting here with Shane Judge. And I understand you're running for mayor, and we would like to get to know you.
Great.
A little bit about yourself.
Well, for 30 years, I was a City Hall reporter at the City of Thunder Bay. I worked
Wow.
for the Chronicle Journal after graduating university. I have an undergrad degree in law and journalism. And I started quite quickly at the Chronicle Journal and became the City Hall reporter. I was also an opinion piece writer, well, more of analysis of what was going on at City Hall.
Okay.
Then I went off to grad school after working for a year. Well, not directly at grad school because I lived in Hawaii for a winter and I sailed the Pacific, which was great fun. That was my great life adventure. And then I went to grad school, and then I came back. My father had contracted cancer. I had a different career arc in mind, working for a national newspaper or whatever, but it didn't happen. My father lasted 7 years. I came back, put my roots down in the city, and I stayed. And I was lucky enough to have a CBC radio station in the city. CBC Radio was a great trainer and a great opportunity to have the time to do investigative reporting that I preferred. And so for 28 years or so, I was the City Hall reporter for CBC Radio. And that's where a good chunk of the audience that you get now would know me from. A lot of people wouldn't know me because they don't listen to CBC Radio. But I can assure them I've been in the city for all that time, working hard. I thought it was a really great job because I got paid for doing what I thought was a public service.
Right.
So over the years, I've read thousands of reports. I've attended hundreds and hundreds of boring council and committee of the whole meetings. I've seen the mistakes. I've seen the victories. I know exactly what it takes to, I think, be a good mayor.
So politics have been a big part of your life.
Huge part of my life. I've seen the mistakes, for example, of city council not telling a soul, but giving Horizon Wind an option to lease land to put up wind turbines on top of Mount McKay without telling anybody.
Yes.
I mean, huge mistake that a lot of the incumbents on this council were part of. That's the kind of, if somebody says, Shane, you don't really have any experience. Well, all that experience that those people had didn't help them in this situation. They faced a lawsuit, and only the province of Ontario was able to bail them out at the end.
Wow. So you're very well aware of the politics involved, the
Yes.
media that's involved,
Sure.
how to conduct yourself, and how has the campaign trail been so far since you've announced it?
Well, I think that the campaign has really turned. There was no debate at all about the event center, but I wrote an article that went into the Chronicle Journal about why I want to run for mayor. And I think there was a sea change in the community as a result of that article. I talked about our city being in decline, our aging population and our shrinking population. And those statistics come actually from city reports. They're not made up by Shane Judge. They come out from city reports. We've lost 5,000 people over the last 15 years, and the Ministry of Finance says, just raw demographics, we're going to lose another 7,000. We have an average age in Thunder Bay of 43 years. The average for the province of Ontario is 40 years. Doesn't seem like much, but to a demographer, it's huge. When you think, for example, that the major midget kings in Thunder Bay didn't ice a team this year. That's the apex. Those are the best, those are the elite players. And the fact is, they didn't have enough of them to ice a team that would be competitive. You know why that is? Because there aren't enough players at the bottom of the pool to work their way up to the top. So we've got a shrinking population. If you go to a high school football game these days, instead of seeing 60 to 75 players, you see 30. And you see players playing both ways. When I was a kid in high school in the 70s, you never saw that. There were tons of players. So what I'm saying is that when you really look at the big picture, we're in trouble demographically. We lost 11 grain elevators. We lost 3 paper mills. We lost 2 huge sawmills. That's a big part of our basic tax base. And we had to make it up somehow, that loss. And what we did was we increased the dividend from T-Baytel from $10 million to $17 million to help cover the losses of the taxes that we got from those industries that have disappeared.
I'll follow you.
So I'm really concerned that if we go ahead and build an event center, that we are going to be locking in extra taxes every year because it's going to be a money loser. They admit as much, over $1 million a year, that when the baby boomers pass, there's going to be too few people to carry a much bigger burden.
Right.
I'm really not so worried about our generation, although extra taxes everybody's worried about.
Oh, yes.
But I think the real concern is for the younger people. Can they afford to run that thing when there are so many fewer of them?
So from what I've been seeing on council, they're seeing what's going to happen now and if and when they build it, but you're projecting forward, trying to look at this.
I'm looking 10 years down the
Yes.
road. There are some things that the city has not been talking about at all, about the bigger financial picture in Thunder Bay. For example, did you know that over the next 2 decades, and there's a city report on this, over the next 2 decades, we have to spend $200 million on our water distribution system. This is the water system that runs throughout Thunder Bay
Right.
underground. We've built and borrowed money for the water treatment plant at Bear Point,
Yep.
but the water distribution system also needs a lot of work. The province forced the city to do this financial plan after Walkerton.
Okay.
And so
yeah.
the report was done in 2013. And if you look at it, it says, yes, $10 million a year over 20 years. Now, when you think about it, your water bill's gone up 60% over the last 6 years.
I've heard a lot of people complaining.
A lot of people complaining. Well, you can imagine what it was going to be if we had to spend another $200 million, twice as much as the event center, on our water system, what your water bill's going to be. What the city has done to kind of lessen the impact, instead of an 8% increase a year going forward, they're borrowing another $70 million. And what that does is it lowers to 3% the increase each year.
Okay.
But let me tell you, it's going to be 3% forever to pay off this new water distribution system that we're going to have to build. We have one of the oldest in the province.
Oh, we
That's
do.
why it's a problem.
Okay. Well, I do recall, I don't know if this is close to it, but Kenora last year declared a state of emergency because of all their water main breaks and their system being so old. This
Yeah.
was in the winter because we had a cold winter, but I mean, I'm sure they coincide somehow.
Well, I get your point. My point is that instead of putting money into an event center right now, having to borrow an extra $14 million as our share to debenture it, I think we ought to concentrate on what I'll call our real infrastructure.
Yeah.
Our water and sewer lines, we had flooding in the
Yes.
intercity area we've got to address. Our roads, notwithstanding all the money that we've spent on it and borrowed to pay for at this point, our infrastructure, our basic infrastructure is in real trouble. And when I weigh the priorities of the city, I say an event center can wait. In fact, you know that the city actually said that an event center can wait? In 2006, there was a report by Greg Alexander. He was the head of the Community Services Department.
Okay.
You may remember Lakehead University way back then, well, not that long ago, 8 years ago, asked the city if they'd be interested in contributing to a new hockey rink in the city.
Okay. Yep.
So administration looked at it, and they looked at the Fort William Gardens and all the other facilities, and Greg Alexander concluded, you know what, the Fort William Gardens is good for the foreseeable future, and we shouldn't get involved with Lakehead University and this venture. I think that says it all. The Fort William Gardens are quite adequate. They're nowhere used near the capacity that they have
No.
for the foreseeable future. In my view, it's 10 years. Let's wait to see what happens to our population. The people coming in and the people leaving roughly balance each other out at this point.
Yeah.
And what you're left with is the core of who's here. It's an aging population.
Right?
If you looked at a recent Saturday newspaper, looked at the number of obituaries, there were 20 of them. How many births? None. I think that tells the whole story about
Okay.
our problem. So
That's a lot of deaths.
that's a lot of death. So I have a different take. I think the picture is much darker than the one being painted by the city. They say, for example, Mayor Hobbs says that, well, listen, there's $600 million in new building permits in the city that have been taken out in the recent past.
I have heard that. Yep.
Well, the fact of the matter is, I don't know where he got the $600 million figure. He has newer ones than me. But I know from city figures from 2012, 90% of that money that's been invested in those building permits is from government. It's government
So
institutions.
it's just a generalization.
So it's, well, what it is there's only 10% of that
Okay.
is coming from the private sector. And what generates growth? Not government. That can disappear. Private sector is what drives growth. And so I think that it's kind of a phony picture that's being painted that we're a really growing city. It's only because of government largesse that we're growing.
Okay.
So I have a real concern about the picture that's being painted, about the need for this event center. I don't see a groundswell of the public demanding it, like the community auditorium. When it was first coming to being, there were people in the community who put up $10,000 of their own, thousands of dollars of their own money to kickstart it. You don't hear that here.
Well, there was a gentleman at the last report that was out at the Italian Center, whoever this gentleman was, he was on a committee for the auditorium. And he made everybody quite aware of that money that you're speaking of.
That's right.
And the hush that came over everybody that was there, because nobody really knew what he was talking about because it was just presented. I'm saying the public.
I think it caught everybody by
Yes.
surprise, but that is a fact. The private, there is no groundswell in this city for that. This has all come from the top.
Right.
Top down saying, and I think that some aging politicians and bureaucrats want a legacy project. That's my take on it. Why else do this? Because there's no real push in the community to do it. Greg Alexander said the Gardens is good enough for now. This whole AHL team and all this other thing, I think it's problematic. And they've added this convention center, which is fascinating. You know what a convention center does? It undermines the Da Vinci, the Italian Cultural Center, the KC Center, everybody that now holds wedding banquets and the like. How are they going to compete against a taxpayer-subsidized new facility with a beautiful view of Lake Superior? Those outfits are very concerned about what's going to happen to them if we build this new event center. And City Council's not talking about that. But enough about the event center. Let's talk about some of my alternatives, because I want people to know that I'm not a one-issue candidate. I have other thoughts. And it is this one. One of the biggest issues we have is the sense of community safety and the scourge of racism. And I have what I think is a novel approach to it. Here's my proposal. Each year, we take $1 million from the casino revenues that the city gets.
Right.
I think it's on the order of $5 million that we get from slot revenues. Take $1 million of it, which is 0.5% of the city's $200 million budget.
Okay.
And the money goes to the Crime Prevention Council. The Crime Prevention Council then decides or invites people from all over the city to make a proposal, especially from recreation centers, for programs that they can provide supervised, safe places for kids to play, or for programs for new people arriving in the city. You know that we have, there is a huge diaspora going on from the far north into Thunder Bay.
Absolutely.
A lot of people voting with their feet because their lives are terrible in the far north, and they come to Thunder Bay with nothing. Now, for the first time, there is going to be money to develop programs to help those people integrate into the community. I'm hoping that university students and college students grab this. You get a business student, you get a sociology student, you get an outdoor rec student.
That's a good idea.
They get together and they put together a program, they apply for the money, and they run this program in a neighborhood. I hope a poor neighborhood where they have nothing at the moment.
Right.
This is a completely new approach, and what I really like about it is that after 4 years, there's going to be a report card on how well each ward did to get money from the Crime Prevention Council for their ward. Now, all of a sudden, ward councillors are invested in seeking out leaders in the community, bringing them along, helping them develop their business plan, making the appeal to the Crime Prevention Council, and getting that up and running. Because after 4 years, everybody in the city is going to know how much money came to their ward and how successful that program was. Now voters, for the first time, will have an objective measurement of how well their ward councillor did. I think it changes.
That's a grassroots idea.
It's a very grassroots idea. I think it changes politics in the city. I think we have to put money at poverty and crime and safety and a welcoming and getting past the racism of seeing
Yeah.
Aboriginal people in the community as strangers. If your kids are finally playing with Aboriginal kids and getting along, it may not be this generation, but the next generation, they won't be the stranger. And you
Yeah.
won't be painting this terrible brush of racism on them. They'll be your friends and acquaintances. I think this is a really interesting and novel approach that nobody's put forward.
Well, no child's born with the word hate in their mind, and it's a learned behavior just like anything else as
That's
a
right.
child.
I even hear Tom Walters, the head of the Crime Prevention Council, now talking my language, that we have to start at the grassroots. We have to build neighborhoods. And my campaign is build neighborhoods, not an event center we can't afford. So there you go on that. But I also have a couple of other things that I'd like to
Yes.
talk about. In my campaign, we have a real issue because there has not been a lot of new investment from the outside in Thunder Bay.
Right.
We did capture lightning in a bottle with Michael Power, who was at the hospital.
Right.
And he brought millions of dollars into the city because he had contacts with outfits like Siemens,
Okay.
who brought their brand new, not completely tested imaging equipment to Thunder Bay Regional Hospital. What followed that was Thunder Bay Regional Research Institute. Lots of federal government money and scientists and people started coming in.
Yes.
That is very rare to get somebody the quality of Michael Power with the connections. I call it lightning in a bottle.
That's awesome.
So not being able to get that to happen every day, my view, we have to work with the people that we have, the people who are here, who've invested their time and money in the community already. And I know that there's a gap between how much businesses are doing here and how much they could potentially do. I get this from the head of the mining readiness strategy that the city has hired, this guy named John Mason.
Okay.
He says there has to be a lot of education of local businesses. He'd call it Mining 101, where local companies are told about the opportunities in the supply chain, what they call a national supply chain,
Right.
where other companies in other cities are getting a part of this business, but Thunder Bay isn't. We could do a lot better, he says. So that would be a third focus of mine. And finally, one that's sort of closest to my heart because I was a reporter for 30 years,
Yes.
is transparency and openness. It was a fight all those years asking councillors, why are you going in behind closed doors to that meeting? You should be talking about it out here.
Yes.
They become very comfortable, in my view, with these closed doors. And even after the decision's made, try to get a report out of them about what they decide and why they decided. They just stick their hands up in formal council and it's over with, and we don't know really what happened.
Yeah.
I want a new era where there would be rules that the reports from administration that were the basis of a decision, except for legal advice,
Right.
and issues that might put the city in a situation where there's a liability created. Otherwise, those documents become public. For example, the recent sale of the municipal golf course. There's a lot of concern out in the community. They would be answered if the city merely released that report to the public because the decision's been made.
Right.
What did who were the bidders? How much did they bid? What did the planning department recommend as the winning bid and why? If we had that, all that would disappear. And that's what I'm going to
Right.
change. One of the first things I move on is that. And that is the nut of my campaign.
So it makes accountability for everybody,
For
and as
everybody.
it should be.
Yes,
and
I think
people
so.
have questions, and there is answers, and it's frustrating not getting the answers.
Yeah.
How are you attracting the younger people to vote? Or any ideas?
Yes. Well, I am hoping that this idea of giving $1 million to the Crime Prevention Council is going to be a unique opportunity for college and university students
Right.
to improve their CV and to help a community.
Okay.
There's a terrible fight going on amongst recent grads trying to get the best resume possible to
Right.
get a job. I'm offering them an unprecedented opportunity to put together with a group of friends and acquaintances a plan, get it approved, and get it implemented, helping a neighborhood, but also helping themselves. That's what I think the city needs to do, build up from the bottom, but it's young people that's going to drive it. They
Yes.
want to see a different city? Here's your big chance because I'm giving you $1 million
To do it.
to do it. Unprecedented. Right now, it's council deciding and pushing down. Here's a chance to grab and reach and go up. I think young people should be really attracted to my program.
They should be, especially the ones that are in school, and even your programs that you're talking about for people that are coming out of town and moving here from the reserves, and it gives everybody an opportunity.
That's right. And you won't hear that kind of idea coming from any of the other mayoralty candidates or at large. One of the great things about having been a reporter for 30 years is you get to see what's there and what's missing. And so I spent a lot of time this summer before I decided to run thinking about, well, what is missing? And this is what came to my mind, and then I started fleshing it out. I want to tell you why I decided to run.
I was just going to ask you that.
Yeah.
That's
it was a bit of a bit of an evolution, but the real trigger was when a group of people that I didn't know went to City Council and said, you know, we're concerned about this event center. It was $60 million in the original proposal. Now it's $100 million.
Right.
Can we have a plebiscite? And City Council that night, you had to have watched it, was incredibly rude to these people. They said, you don't really know what you're talking about. We do. We've read all the reports. If you don't like what we're doing, run against us. That was the challenge. And I decided, you guys are bullying these people who probably don't have the wherewithal to run. They have jobs and busy lives and otherwise are occupied. I said, I'm not. I'm retired. I'm going to run. I was just so upset at what they did to those people. They challenged me, I felt.
Yeah.
And here I am.
You definitely have some grassroots ideas, and my opinion, who was the mayor of New York in the 90s? Rudy Giuliani. He had a big problem with New York and crime. So he went basically to grassroots and he cleaned it up. I think it was called the carrot stick campaign that he called it. And he cleaned up the city.
Well, you start with getting rid of the graffiti on the trains. As soon as you allow graffiti, then there's an impression that it's open doors and you can put graffiti everywhere. You've got to tamp that stuff down. It's the same with racism, and it's the same with poverty. It's all more expensive to deal with after the fact. But my view, if you're a little proactive, and $1 million may sound like a lot of money, but in the city's budget, it's 0.5%. I think it's a wise investment. I just think it's a new approach, and I think we've got to try it because nothing else has worked.
There's a few ways to invest in the community, and I think one is the people.
Absolutely.
You have to. History will show that you have to invest in your people.
You bet.
Absolutely. Is there anything else you'd like to add today that
No.
I may have
I don't want to dilute the waters. That's my message.
That's your message.
Yeah, I'm going to go after 4 key things, and I'm sticking with that. And I think, from everything I've heard on the street thus far, people are attracted to it. Get our priorities right, build our neighborhoods.
That's a perfect idea. It needs to be done. And you're not generalizing on one group of people. You're saying people in general.
That's right.
And that's the way it should be, because we're all in one community here.
You betcha.
Well, I'd like to thank you so much for being here.
Oh, well, thank you for inviting me.
And you have a wonderful day, Shane.
Okay, you too.
Thank you.